Hello, friends. I'm Wendy Tremaine, and I'm here with my co-host, Rob Stroup.
Hello, Wendy.
Hi, Rob. This month, we have a surprise. It is not a regular episode of Knowing. In fact, it's not an episode of Knowing, but a whole new show titled Snowflake.
Yeah.
Snowflake's format is a bit different from Knowing, even though both Rob and I are involved in Snowflake. Rob's the host. It's his baby, and my role is creative but off mic. Snowflake is a totally new pod under Chapter 24 Media, which is our media brand.
Yes.
So to introduce Snowflake, how about I ask you a few questions, Rob?
That sounds great.
All right. Tell us about Snowflake. What is this pod all about?
Well, Wendy, I enjoy the idea of owning things that are meant to be derogatory. Sometimes people use that descriptor of snowflake to make fun of a man who's sensitive or in touch with his emotions. Well, I see a lot of these things that they're making fun of as good qualities for a man to have.
I agree with you.
Yeah. Snowflake is a lens. Rather than being specifically topical, I'm just showing you the world as I see it through the eyes of a quote-unquote snowflake.
So hang on. So you're a snowflake, for sure.
When people use that term, I think they mean me.
Then you're probably right.
The topics on the show can be wide-ranging, but the lens remains the same. So the point is really being in touch with your whole self.
I love that. So why now? In addition to that, it's apropos to drop an EP called Snowflake around the holidays, jingle, jingle. Why now? Why does it feel like the right time to put out a show on this softer side of masculinity, if you will?
Well, in my half-century plus on this planet, I have never witnessed a time where there seems to be more confusion about what masculinity is and is supposed to look like. When anything veers away from the traditional classic masculinity, it gets labeled as woke, or we get called a snowflake or a fairy or whatever the derogatory is. And it limits men from really seeing themselves, you know.
And inhabiting themselves.
Right. We're not supposed to show our emotions, right? We're supposed to be guarded emotionally. We're not supposed to cry. And that's crushing for a man who has a whole side of himself that has to be kept under wraps or hidden. So I just want to see room for every expression that a man has, and that includes the more classic masculinity as well. I think it would be a mistake to look at that as derogatory.
Sure.
But I feel like it is, for many, a very confusing time to be a man, especially young men growing up and trying to fit into this changing paradigm. Am I the Marlboro man or am I the fairy? It's just too binary for me.
There's so much in between.
Yeah. More generally speaking, I'm pretty stoked to see what I do see in the world, which is, you know, straight men, all men, able to wear what they want if they want to, even if that includes a skirt or women's shoes or nail polish or whatever, and not feel like less of a man.
Yeah, it'd be nice if we just didn't even call them women's shoes. There was just like different shoes or whatever. Shoes.
They're heels.
They're heels. Yeah. Well, I also think of you as a feminist. I've had more than a few occasions where I thought he's more of a feminist than I am. So let's talk about that.
Well, I do consider myself a feminist. It's interesting when you think of the word feminist, what image does it conjure? You know, you see maybe a young woman with a fist in the air at a march. And sure, that's one kind of feminist. But what if you're a man who wants to help bring equality and fairness to women? What does being a male feminist look like? That's another part of the lens for Snowflake.
You know, for me, writing projects really help me discover what I think and feel. I start off with something, but like it's the writing where I discover it. It's kind of a way of exploring or teasing out that leads me to new and often very surprising and expansive self-discoveries.
Sure.
And secondarily, my writing is almost always driven by some wish or a desire for something I want to affect in the world or something I see absent. So with Snowflake, Rob, is there something that you hope Snowflake will have an effect on or something that you feel is missing that you're trying to fill with it?
Yeah, I think if I had to put that into a succinct phrase, it would be cultural permission. Permission to live your fullest life without judgment, first of all, from within yourself, And hopefully over time, without judgment from the culture at large.
Yeah.
You know, cry at that movie. Like, you don't have to hide the fact that you like musicals if you like musicals. I love musicals. Paint your nails if you want to. It's all about permission.
Yeah. Well, I want to say that I really like Snowflake. I think it's a great show. I think it's important. It's culturally relevant. It's on time. And, humans, I feel, are essentially conformists. And I feel that men, like women, seek the support of others like themselves to bolster opportunities to be who they are. And I kind of see you stepping into that, like opening an opportunity and bolstering it.
Yes.
So I'm psyched to deliver it. I'm proud of you. And let's jump into what's ahead.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, after this Snowflake release for the month of December, which we thought would be cute, it'd be a snowflake for Christmas, the regular Knowing podcast format will resume. But surely, eventually, there will be more Snowflake episodes in the future.
Hooray.
Yeah.
So January, we're back to our normal format. And until then, and in between, Happy New Year. Have fun out there and stay friendly.
Yeah. Happy holidays. And here's Snowflake. Welcome to Snowflake. I'm Rob Stroup, your host, your resident snowflake, and 4-star general in the Army of Love. Today, we'll be discussing the military. In an effort to narrow this potentially massive topic, I want to focus on a couple of points that really came out in the interviews. What motivates a choice towards a career in the military? Are there socioeconomic, racial, gender, sexual orientation factors that influence the decision to join? I've heard it said that it's not the sons and daughters of senators that fight our wars. Is that true? Mike Baker, in a New York Times article published in December of 2022, reported that the JROTC targets its classes far more heavily in low-income and minority communities. These JROTC, or Junior Reserve Officer Training Corps, classes conducted in high schools are often made mandatory, even though that violates the Pentagon's guidelines. The article says, quote, a vast majority of schools with the high enrollment numbers were attended by a large proportion of non-white students and those from low-income households. It goes on, parents in some cities say their children are being forced to put on military uniforms, obey a chain of command, and recite patriotic declarations in classes they never wanted to take, unquote. The most cynical side of me says that we as a country are offloading our own protection on the marginalized and the poor, and there certainly is some truth in that. But it's likely that recruitment among these lower income groups is just more effective than in affluent communities. A good paying career or free college education is less enticing for the white and affluent with a myriad of life choices and opportunities. And if people are really looking to a career in the military for a leg up or an opportunity that their life would not otherwise afford them, is the military delivering on its promises? I've also heard that the military has become one of the most progressive arms of the government in many ways. Is that true? In what ways are women and LGBTQ+ communities more welcomed into the armed services than in the past? And how much room do we have for improvement? I had the privilege of interviewing 2 people from my community that chose a military path. Sylvia Norris, whom I will discuss more later, represents a minority woman who actually served in the Middle East and worked for the Department of Defense in intelligence for a decade. But first up is Buddy Jones, a late 20s, charismatic young man from a small town in southern New Mexico. He comes from an underprivileged Christian background. Buddy is remarkably expressive, often breaking into songs spontaneously, intelligent, sensitive, and in touch with his emotions. He represents the type of man that fascinated me because I wondered how his spirit would respond to the confines of military discipline. When this interview was recorded, Buddy had just finished boot camp and was awaiting his deployment. Let's go now to my interview with Buddy Jones.
Blue skies and a nice breeze. Yeah, yeah. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. A New Mexico sun rising up over the mountains. The rays of light come into the window. Ba-dum, boom, yeah. Turtleback feeling great under my feet, hiding up to the top of the damn peak, and everybody can't see that I can see everybody from the tip of the top. Oh, blue skies and a nice breeze. That's fun.
Nice.
I forgot what it sounds like to like you're talking to Mike and hear yourself.
Yeah, this is my cozy environment.
I dig it.
Yeah, man. Let's just go in. I love that little improvisational thing. That's going to be good later.
Oh, is it already recording?
Yeah, I caught the end of it.
Okay. I was reaching for a couple words, so that's going to be interesting to hear later.
Yeah. I want to welcome my guest today, Buddy Jones, on the Snowflake podcast. Buddy, thanks for being here.
It feels great to be here, man.
Yeah.
I'm very excited.
So this podcast is about looking at the world through the lens of a sensitive male in a culture that rewards masculinity and macho.
Okay.
You know, buddy, I could talk to you about a variety of topics, and it would be fun and interesting. But I've always known you to be super charismatic, improvisational singer, as we saw at the top. A podcaster yourself, delving into being in touch with your emotions, etc. So when I heard you chose to go into the military, I was intrigued. So let's just start there. What drove you towards that path?
I think it started pretty young. I like the idea of just the uniform and the discipline. And I don't know, probably 8th grade, 9th grade is when I started seeing JROTC got on my radar. And I liked it. You know, the idea of a group of people getting together and just being disciplined and looking sharp and doing things together, I think kind of started that role. And then you have the idea of getting paid to travel and having the security has been awesome. Skill development. A big thing, I think, is just like the desire to serve. That has kind of shifted a little bit. I mean, I still have a desire to serve. I'm borderline leaning towards using the word like adulterated a little bit, but yeah, it's just like it's not quite what I thought it was going to be. It's been very different.
Okay, adulterated. Let's come back to that. What about your upbringing? Was there anything there that contributed to your chosen career path?
Yeah, definitely. So my father was Border Patrol.
Okay.
Mom was a nurse, and you know, just seeing my dad wear the uniform, and I grew up shooting with my dad from a young age, and then I'm actually, you know, I'm right-handed, but I'm dominant left eye, and so he switched me to my left hand when I was like 14, and I just started hitting everything, and it was awesome. And obviously, you know, the military is big on guns and weapons and shooting and all that stuff. And I love the idea. I listen to a lot of Jocko Willink. He's a podcaster as well. He's a retired Navy SEAL. And just the way he talks about it is awesome. Leadership, just going out there and getting after it. And like war is like human life amplified. And that really interested me because so many things nowadays are kind of like mundane. Humans are really comfortable. And so it's, you know, it's a little bit of testing. And so I think my interest growing up, and then my father being a part of the government, seeing him wear the uniform, seeing him go out and do the job, kind of put me on this path a little bit.
Okay, so you liked the sharpness and the crispness of the uniform, the discipline. So it sounds like you may have come from a house that had some structure and some discipline.
Absolutely.
So that was an environment that you were comfortable in,
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
like to continue that, perhaps?
Yeah, and you know, I feel really good inside of a structure. You know, my dad, love him to death, but there was a lot of his way or the highway. And, you know, independence was encouraged as an idea, but it was like, you know, hey, it's time to do what I say, you know, like I'm telling you to do something, get it done. And my ability to perform inside of a structure that's already in place is pretty high. I feel comfortable doing that. I could feel like, you know, as far as, no pun intended here, but rising through the ranks, I feel like I'm going to be okay in that aspect. You lay something out for me, I'll knock it out.
Do you feel uncomfortable without that, without kind of like something to lean on structure-wise?
I'm a self-starter for some things, but I feel like the things that make me happy that I want to self-start don't necessarily translate to the real world and making money and stuff like that.
Yeah,
like I'm a creative guy, but in my house growing up, that was never, hey, find what you're good at, get creative, do what you love, and go make money doing it. It was more like, hey, work, make money, get security, get stability, and then
do what you love.
As a side thing, you know?
Yep. Yeah, I had that same message growing up. I'm glad you mentioned money because I want to explore that as a motivation. But more broadly, what were just some of the top things you were looking to get out of your experience in the military?
I was really excited for a group of people getting together and wanting to be the better version of themselves, but that's just kind of not the case. You have a lot of people who are like, 18 to 22 make up a lot of the base that I was at. A lot of people coming in and out of high school or after college, not sure what they want to do. I'm 27. What I'm bringing to the table is a lot different than somebody who's fresh out of high school, right? And so the expectation was people wanted to get in there kind of gung-ho and like be all they can be, but that's not the case. So that was part of the motivation. I'm just going to quickly list them off. Money, security, traveling, being a part of something bigger than yourself. And then, God, I look great in a uniform. So I like to throw that one in there.
Excellent. I love that. Okay. Do you feel like your peers in the military, do you think some of the same motives for being there in terms of like people that are looking for an opportunity? Is that what you find with other people, or is it more of a diverse socioeconomic thing?
Absolutely. Huge multiple circle Venn diagram of motivation for people joining. And a lot of it has to do with what I said. And, also wanting to serve as I hit first. So yeah, all of those things. And to be honest, yeah, it's a huge opportunity for somebody that doesn't come from money or that doesn't have a skill set or can't pay for college. I personally didn't start at a place where I knew what I wanted to do. Now at 27, in the last year, I've really honed in that I want to work with the people and work with the body and the mind. But I would have been in $60,000, $70,000 worth of debt way earlier than this. I don't know. I didn't feel comfortable doing that or switching majors. So yeah, I think for a lot of people who don't know what they want to do or can't afford what they want to do, this creates a really good opportunity for that, for sure.
Yeah. Okay. So this is really like leveraging your time in the military so that you can get the education that you want to go into the field that you want to go into.
Yeah.
That otherwise would have been incredibly expensive.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And also just if you do it right and you fall into the right job, no matter the branch, you're gaining a skill that is marketable, but also just grows your ability to jump in pretty much anywhere and be successful because of the structure of the military. Show up on time, be in the right uniform, get the job done. I have that ability to do so already because I've, had my failures and then decided, discipline was a good move as, somebody employable. But starting off young in the military, you learn very quickly how to be an adult because if not, you are responsible for it. You face the consequences.
You mentioned earlier that going in, you had a certain expectation for why people wanted to serve. And that got, I think you used the word adulterated. Can you expand on that?
Yeah. So when I went in, that desire to serve with the, brothers in arms, really just like hold each other accountable to being physically ready, being mentally prepared, doing what's right, standing up for people. There's a term in the military called shitbagging, where if you're shitbagging, you're the guy that's not doing what you're supposed to do, or you're not doing things right, or you just, you don't care at all, and it ends up hurting your team and the people around you, be it longer work hours or more workload, or just, leaving them hanging, it doesn't make a good team member. And it just seems like there was a lot more shitbagging than I anticipated.
Yeah.
I want to be there for myself, but there are times when I don't want to be there because it's just like, man, it seems like nobody wants to be serious and get it done and do their best. I like it when a group of people get together and they, just for the sake of doing something right, doing it well, and being the best version of themselves, they want to do it. There's no reward. There's just like, hey, let's do it and do it right, because why not?
What else are we going to do?
Yeah. Like what reward is there in, I don't know, what self-image is there that you have when you don't do anything right because there's no reward for it?
You see it on the job too, like on any job, you see those people, they're there. It's just interesting that people of that ilk would choose the military, which is such a disciplined, structured environment. They would try to choose some job where they could be a fuck up and not,
I will say that I was at a training base, and I think it's going to be very like real world in your face for a lot of those people, myself included. Obviously, I'm going to the fleet. I think it's going to be a huge wake up call for myself who feels prepared and feels responsible, but also for those who were just kind of like floating through and skimming by and, oh, like C's get degrees, but for a job that is literally going to equal potentially life and death for a group of people. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And so, man, I think it's going to be a huge wake-up call for sure.
Yeah. So I grew up like you did. My dad worked for the fish and game department. I grew up, in a hunting, fishing, camping family. We shot guns. My dad was a hunter. My brother became a really avid hunter and ended up doing bow hunting and getting like trophy elk and all that stuff. I would be drug out there hunting with them, and I just, I'd go. But my mom said to my dad at one point, "Did it ever occur to you, Dave, that Robbie doesn't want to kill anything?" and he's like, "No, I never thought about that." And Russ likes to kill stuff.
Yeah.
As my older brother.
Yeah.
So, okay, taking it from light to a little more serious. Let's just say the shit hits the fan.
Yeah.
And the U.S. gets involved in some kind of conflict, hot war, and you got to go. How do you feel about that?
I made the commitment. I believe it's really important to be a man of your word. I don't think that you need to lock yourself into something that you don't believe in. When you give your word to something, things can change. So if it's something that I just, in my heart and in my gut, I'm just like, this is not right, that I'm going to see if I can maybe change to a conscientious objector or find out what's available to me to maybe still serve, but in a way that I'm not,
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, not responsible directly for the loss of life. I mean, I'm going to be on a ship, so if something does happen, my job is, the alarms and the sensors and broadcasting signals and different things like that. So I won't be directly involved quite like that. But I think there's a time to fight and a time to stand up for important things, especially when oppression is happening. I mean, you turn your eye from something that's happening to another human. That's really wrong. I don't think that it's right. I think everybody has a responsibility because we coexist on this earth. And to just turn your eye and say, that's not my problem, that's kind of an issue with me. Now, like, again, on the flip side of that is like, dude, if this is just like about politicians, like who has the bigger stick and a bunch of other really questionable reasons behind it, I'm like, man, oh, dude, what is driving that makes me not want to be a part of it at all. You know what I'm saying?
Oh, I do know what you're saying.
Yeah,
I find it incredibly fascinating because my impression is that the military requires kind of like, I don't want to call it blind commitment, but like when the orders come down, the orders come down, and you got to follow them. And so like, I find it very fascinating that you, if a war came into the forefront for you, that you would actually be making a moral choice, whether the motivations of that war, whether they be making the rich richer or protecting oil interests or something of that nature versus World War II. I mean, everybody can get on board with that, right? Like,
Sure.
We had to do it. So you feel like from your vantage point, your position in the military, that you could take a command that was given from on high to go to war and question it based on your own principles, your own morality?
Yeah. You know what's crazy? In the last week, I've just had these thoughts. It's like we're all born into this world, naked. And, for some of us, naked will depart, dude, dust to dust,
Mm-hmm.
And, the people above me have taken a different path or they've been in it longer or whatever. But at the end of the day, I signed a contract with the U.S. military, with the U.S. Navy, and they have a contract with me. And one of those things a lot of people don't realize as civilians is like, if there is an order that comes down that's morally questionable, then you have a right and an obligation to not go through with it, right? So like if you're my commanding officer and we're in some type of scenario where you're like, hey, kill these unarmed people because I said so, my obligation is to disregard that order. It's not a lawful order. And
Is that what's taught? Is that what they...
That is what's taught. But I think really what comes down to it is sometimes some things aren't so black and white. And then that's where it comes down to like personal morals and what you believe.
Mm-hmm.
And then, that'll lead, depending on the outcome, that'll lead to investigation and were you right, were you wrong, whatever.
Okay. While we're on this subject, if it came down to it and the circumstances were such that you could morally justify it, could you take a life?
I would hate it. In the last few years, the way I've developed as a human and the way I see things, I detest the idea of taking a human life because I think there's redemption as a possibility for anybody. I think when it came down to it, in a situation where I'm going to take a life, it's going to be me or them. And unless I'm sacrificing myself for somebody that I love or something that I believe in, it's not going to be me. I'm still wrestle with that thought. Sometimes I'm like, well, how can I decide to take another person's life? But then it's just like, I think that instinct to live will play quite a large part. And I also want to say, just as we get into this more, I should have said it sooner, but I don't represent the United States military or the United States Navy. I represent myself and my experiences. So just wanted to say that.
Okay.
We can move on, but I definitely wanted to throw that in there.
No, that's wonderful. Thank you for that distinction. Because I really wanted to talk to you, about your reflections on the military, having that experience, knowing that you are a sensitive person, an artistic person. I want to ask you, being a creative and being a sensitive person, is the military environment difficult for you to be who you are? Do you feel like you have to mask it a little bit? Do you feel like you can wear it on your sleeve? Do you feel like it's accepted of you?
Crazy enough, I am a sensitive man. I feel like I'm an artistic guy. I love to see the world in a particular light. And in this way, I think I'm unique. I don't think I'm the only one like this, but I think I'm unique in that I think that completes the picture of my masculinity. So I don't hide that at all. A lot of my friends in the Navy have already seen, when something's important to me and it touches my heart, they've seen me cry. They've seen me talk about things. And I think what's really awesome about it is because some of them are, younger, I've been able to kind of passively big brother them and just living my life before their eyes, and I've taken some dudes aside and I'm just like, hey man, like, let's get serious for a minute and just have a heart to heart and talk, and like, it's been really cool to have some of those conversations with them, and then, sometimes you get those guys who are like what people would consider toxic masculinity. They're just like gung-ho and tough and they're, like no emotion, even though, all the aggressive emotions are there, but it's like, men can't be emotional, but they can be angry and they can be rude and they can be tough. I don't know. I think the mark of a real man is being able to go out and fight and then turn around and change a diaper and have fun with a baby and care about your woman in a deep way, or your partner, right? Yeah. In a deep way where you're allowing emotions to flow between both of you. And I think that's a picture of a whole human. When I'm talking with somebody who may disagree with me, I'm thinking about what brought them to that moment. It's a little bit of assuming, but I'm assuming based on our culture and how that dude appears to me standing in front of me, what his experience is a little bit. And then usually that works out in a way that I can go about the conversation and really open it up to my terms in a way. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
But I also have seen it where people are very close-minded and they want a certain outcome and they just really like use their authority in an inappropriate way that pushes people back down when they're trying to expand or have a moment or grow or ask questions that maybe that particular individual isn't comfortable with and doesn't want to answer, so they manipulate the situation and shut it down.
I'm just grateful that there's room for that. My impression, which is totally from the outside looking in, was that there was just much more pressure to conform to norms. So it's great to hear that there's room for more diverse personalities. How about room for diversity more broadly? What about people that are gay and out? What is your impression of how accepted they are? Do you think they feel welcomed?
Yeah, I would say so. I mean, there's still some people that have a problem with it. People maybe from maybe a more close-minded background or maybe a very strong conservative Christian background or very rural. I don't know. I don't know what their backgrounds are. Some people still have a problem with it. But I don't. For the most part, I think a lot of people don't anymore. I mean, it's just life now. We've made that transition as a country and the Navy is pretty, I would say, progressive.
Do you think it's more difficult for the out gay person than it is for you?
I haven't put myself in their shoes. I have some gay friends who definitely feel like they have a lot more to fight through. And then I have some that feel like they don't have any at all. And I think it just comes down to perspective and how you handle situations, right? Because, like, okay, so my battle is like, I'm blind and people make fun of my eyes all the time, and it just, in a way, everybody faces discrimination for something. And I think perspective is huge in that.
No, that's good. That's a good place to transition. I think it's been a wonderful conversation with you, buddy. I guess what I'll do at this point is just say, is there anything that you would like to share with me that I didn't cover on this topic?
I think you do have people who are like really strongly masculine. And it's an unbalanced masculinity because they don't have the ability to be there for their friends and let their friends cry on their shoulder or hug them longer than 2 seconds without feeling, a homoerotic thought rise up,
Okay.
And then the flip side of that is that you have people that are like a snowflake, and you can still have all of that sensitivity and still have that drive and that, I guess, manliness, right?
Yeah.
Because I feel really comfortable in a fight and I feel really good when I fight. And it's not something that I like go out and seek, but sometimes I get together with some of the guys and I'm just like who wants to grapple or who wants to throw down? And it's a blast. And that energy rises up. And it's a really beautiful form of connection that a lot of people, unless you're in that world, you kind of don't really understand it. But just like struggling against another man is a different kind of intimacy among brothers. It's awesome. It's really cool.
Interesting. I think that's wonderful that you can explore that part of yourself and still get a little fight clubby at times,
Well, what's cool is I know awesome men who can build, and at the same time they dance and they make some of the prettiest art I've ever seen. And a lot of people who are just like that imbalanced masculinity would look at that and call them gay or homo or whatever. And it's like we have masculine and femininity inside of us. I believe in God. I don't necessarily believe that God is a man or a woman. I believe that we are, as humans, made in God's image, and that image is masculine and feminine. It's both. Right. And so we have yin yang in both of us. I have yin yang in me, and the woman that I will end up with has yin yang in her, and then ours complement each other.
Yeah.
Right. And there's that polarity conversation that's kind of permeating the influencers right now of Instagram and all over the world. But yeah, you can have a homosexual relationship, be it, male, female, and still have that polarity. Somebody's going to be masculine, somebody's going to be feminine.
Aluminum.
Right. But that's part of our human energy.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And for people to split that and say one belongs to you and one belongs to me is doing them a disservice in their own experience, but also doing the people in their lives a disservice because it's boxy. People are expansive, relationships are expansive. And when you put somebody like that in a category in your own mind, you really miss out on some really awesome things that relationships can hold for you, be it romantic or friendly or family or whatever.
So you mentioned a term that I want to just put another emphasis on.
Feminine?
No, feminine? No. I think you called it unhealthy masculinity.
Unbalanced.
Unbalanced.
Unbalanced. Because you can have somebody really, a healthy individual, and they're just, immature in that particular mindset. They're not less than because of that. It's just an unbalance.
They're taking cues from their culture that tell them they need to be career focused and goal driven and not emotional and all those things. And, I think we can have compassion on those individuals that are kind of cornered by the cultural trappings that we have. And then do things like what we're doing right now is have discussions that maybe enlighten people and go, oh, maybe I can let that emotion out. Maybe I can just be a little more sensitive and not feel like I'm a fairy or something or a snowflake. Buddy Jones, I thank you so much for being here. I have an idea to close this because I want to show to the Snowflake audience that Buddy is a very expressive and creative individual on top of being a very macho man that will fight with a guy and go into the military and do all that. So that's the perfect first interview for Snowflake. And one of the things that I've always thought was cool about you is that you improvise. So with your permission, I'm going to grab a guitar and I'm going to just play some chords. You want to take us out?
Yeah, sure.
You can riff on anything. You can riff on Snowflake. You can riff on military. You can riff on whatever is moving you. Do you have a preference on, do you want it to be kind of bluesy or
I find a progression
folky?
You're comfortable with, and I'll let it flow.
All right.
Before I start flowing with the music, I think you keep playing. I like this, but it's just I think also being able to stand up with your shoulders back and look another human in the eye, woman or man, male or female, masculine, feminine. That's just a really good marker for health. How comfortable in yourself can you be, and then how comfortable can you be creating that safe space in yourself, and then expand it out to the people around you. That's really big.
Nice.
Where the mountains back home into your sea, looking good in the sunrise, they're calling out to me. And the rocks burst open shining bright. I really like the way they catch the light. Where the water flows from the Elephant Butte, I wanna hit that river on a tube, just me and you. Wanna grab a beer at the brewery, hang around and see a movie in that one-room little shop on Broadway Street. TLC, no date. Grab a coffee, grab a hand, be it a woman or your best friend who happens to be a man. Oh no, don't let them go. Doesn't matter what they are, doesn't matter how they feel. Can you look them in the eyes, and can you be real with the people in your life? Oh, they've got a life they want to share with you. With you. With you. How well can you love them? Yeah.
Thank you, Buddy Jones, for being on the show.
That's fine.
All right.
All right, sweet.
Welcome back to Snowflake. What a lovely conversation with Buddy Jones. I want to put a pin in a couple of ideas that Buddy brought forward. He said his more sensitive side, his more feminine side, is what completes his masculinity. He also considered crying in front of his comrades to be setting the right example. I think these are a couple of profound insights that would benefit any young man that would listen. My next guest is Sylvia Norris. She grew up 1,000 miles from nowhere in the cow fields of North Carolina. She's out of the military now, but spent 10 years working in intelligence for the Department of Defense. She brings a lot of perspective on issues women face in the armed services, and also the aftermath of dealing with traumas experienced in active duty. Let's go now to my interview with Sylvia Norris. I'm welcoming Sylvia Norris to the Snowflake podcast. Thanks
Hello.
for being here.
Thank you.
So what were some of the original factors that drove you to consider the military as a career path?
Well, first and foremost, I hate to shatter any illusions of heroism, but I went to school in the middle of a cow field in North Carolina, and there was nothing there other than my minimum wage job and debt to go to college. And I was poor, and I had been working, since I was 14, and I had a concept of how much time equaled how much money. And I got into college. I went to Wells Fargo to apply for the loans, and I saw the interest rate, and I didn't know that I was making a really good decision at the time. I just thought I don't think I'm going to be able to pay that off. This seems but I didn't know I was right. I just thought I don't know if I can do this. I don't think I can afford this life. And I wanted to be a journalist, and I knew their starting salaries, if you get a job, was $18,000, and I would never be able to leave or do anything on that salary with the debt. So that was my first reason. I thought of doing a few other things, but the military had, get out and far away. The Navy was on the ocean, so you see... It's not where you're in the Army and you get stationed in Arkansas and then you're going to Afghanistan, back to Arkansas and back. It's I went to Japan and San Diego, and I got to see Europe and travel, and that was second. I really wanted to see the world. Uh-huh. And I also knew I did information. I was in IT, so I knew in the office when I was reading through the job offers that they gave me after I took the ASVAB, I thought I know what this is in real life, and I know people that do this in real life and they make money. I didn't have to go to school, and I'm getting years of experience working with software, and I'll get out and maybe have a shot at staying out of a cow field. So I'm like, yeah,
So just
those were the
getting
reasons.
away from the cow field was a pretty
Yeah.
primary. And then
I wanted to also meet different kinds of people. Like I was like, I know there are a lot of people out there in the world, and I'm not going to see them if I stay here.
I'm curious about this angle because I get the sense that it's not a lot of sons and daughters of senators.
Oh, definitely not.
In
Those
the
are
military.
officers. Yes, there are.
Oh, I see.
Tons of them go to college. They join the military. They do a 4-year tour as an officer. That they get their hands dirty sometimes, well, oftentimes not, and then get out, and then they go on to pursue career in like politics. I've known a lot of officers that have done that from when I met them like 10 years ago. Now they're all trying to run for something, or they're campaigning for their father. Not a lot of like poverty children enlist. Like that's
Having a history in the military is a nice resume piece for a politician to say,
yes.
I served. You
Yeah,
know?
like Kennedy was in the Navy.
Yeah.
I think he was a SWO officer for like 4 years. Or don't quote me on that, but I know he was in the Navy, and there's a lot of people that modeled themselves after his path that I knew. It's prevalent.
The other people in the military around you, most of them are kind of more in your position.
Yeah.
Yeah. Looking for a leg up, an opportunity.
Looking for a leg up. Teen parents a lot of the time that had a kid when they were like 15 and they need something that the military nothing can really match the benefits of the military.
Right.
For if you have a small kid, a lot of immigrants as well that just come here and they have nothing, and it's such a fast track to getting you status because you get money and benefits and then free college, and it's just a very like great way to advance yourself in society if you don't have anything.
So do you feel like in retrospect that your expectations for that path were fulfilled, exceeded, disappointed?
I think they were shattered and reformed several times over, because I was 17. I was a senior in high school when I did it all. I didn't know what I was doing. I had no idea. My dad did help me a lot. He kept me grounded, and he told me the best way, if I must, he forbid me from enlisting in the Army because he was in Nam. He was like, absolutely not. You're not doing that. And he thought if I was in the Navy, I would be safe on a boat, but then that wasn't the case. I went on the ground anyways. But he came with me and told me, like, this guy's lying. Or he's like, you know what? They would give me, like, if you want to do this job, you get to fix light bulbs on the battleship, and it's a really good job. And my dad would, like, take it and read it and be like, you're going to be fixing shitters. Like, you're going to be fixing toilets. This is, like, don't do this, don't do this. So he went with me, and I turned down, like, a bunch of jobs, and that's how I got into Intel. I didn't expect to do that. That was fun. That community was very interesting, and I didn't have any expectations. I just was like, wow. As far as advancing myself now, looking back, it exceeded my expectations of getting me set up. Also, my personality, I'm good at handling stressful situations in work because of the Navy, so it did have a lot of positive effects. And then, there's like the PTSD that I had no idea. I knew like war-torn, I've seen movies and things, but I mean, you don't know how it is until you feel it for yourself. So that I couldn't have prepared for.
Right. So in terms of the financial and the things you were looking for in terms of opportunity, it delivered on.
Oh, yes.
But then it
times 10.
But then it had an underbelly.
Yeah. Nothing's free.
Yeah, right. So we'll talk about that underbelly as much as we can, and we'll talk about why we can't discuss some of that a little bit as well. But you said you worked in Intel. Can you explain to us civilians like what that means exactly?
Well, I mean, like the military is so massive. There's a job, like it's just like a regular society. So you need dentists and people that run the store, seamstresses, barbers, people that fix the engines and just keep daily operations running. And then you have, in all the branches, there's just like smaller sects of people with security clearances, basically, that are doing missions and, just stuff that isn't for general public knowledge. A lot of the times you have to score top of your unit or division or anything to break into some of the things that I've seen, which I was lucky enough to be able to do. And You have to sign so many things. You have to never say the names of like projects that you work on. You can never admit that you were in certain places. That's wild to me.
You're referring to the non-disclosure agreements that you signed. So Buddy's right at that place where he's just got out of boot camp and he's just going off to Hawaii to be stationed.
Yeah.
He's, not seeing any sort of action, so he hasn't had to sign anything like that.
No.
So these are things that you have to sign once you're kind of like on
I got picked up off of my normal duty. I was an instructor at a school, and I don't know why. I think my test scores, this letter from Washington came down and was like, have Petty Officer Norris please submit this application, and it had like all these requirements, and we were like, what the, and they were like, and don't ever mention it. And we're like, well, okay, I guess I will, but like, what is it? And then like 2 weeks later, I just got like sucked out of where I was and chunked into this weird place where there was like a woman thing. They needed women for reasons, and it was just, that's how I got started. I didn't try. I wasn't like actively pursuing it, but then once I met a lot of civilians and people like out of the military that all work in that organization, and I thought like this is a good place to be for upward mobility, so I stayed.
Yeah. Did that upward mobility come at a cost in terms of what kind of action that you saw?
I guess you can say yes or no. Once I was a civilian, I had more options to say yes or no to like dangerous situations, but when you're in the military enlisted, I wasn't like an E7, I was a junior enlisted, so you have to just kind of say yeah. When they tell you this is the mission, you hear the details, and then you just like figure out how is it going to work. And a lot of the stuff I had to do was very stressful.
So you served in Afghanistan?
As a civilian.
As a civilian,
Yeah.
Okay. I'm just trying to dance around how much we can say, but
No countries.
Oh, you can't say.
I'm scared. I can say the countries, but I don't want to start treading into that.
Okay.
I did expeditionary tours in the Middle East, so if anyone knows what that means.
Okay.
That's on land.
All right.
And then I did 2 boat tours, and then like a small boat ops type of thing.
If you needed to, could you discuss that with a counselor?
I have a therapist, so she can't discuss what we talk about unless I break the law. Or I'm like, tell her I'm going to harm myself. So she hasn't, I haven't gotten any. I've had friends before break their NDAs on accident. And they found out by like getting a letter from a government agency, like threatening their entire life in like military trial if they don't cease and desist. So like, I'm pretty wary of where I talk and like what I say, because I don't want to accidentally tread into getting in trouble.
Totally understand. Do you feel like after that experience that you've gotten from the VA or from the military, the mental support that you need to recover from any traumas that you experienced there?
It depends on what city. TRC was kind of rough because there's only one therapist through my insurance, and she's a nice lady, a good person, but not for me. She's used to white men.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, and like that, everything is veteran programs. A lot of them, the mainstream ones, are for white men, and it doesn't resonate with me. The ways that they tell you to cope and remember and go through your journey and process it just don't resonate with me, because I have entirely different perspective than like how white men see things, and especially as functioning and trying to navigate through the military. So it took me quite a while and a lot of hospital visits and a lot of me going into the office and just like having to demand, like, you need to help me. I served and I worked for the Department of Defense for 10 years. Someone needs to help me. I'm not doing well. It had to get to that point. Santa Fe, I met someone in the VA clinic that like told me about more women's veterans things. And I finally like got off a months-long waiting list and finally got help, but it took a really long time.
Yeah.
Very long time. And some people can't wait that long, so that's upsetting.
If you knew beforehand what you were going to need to keep secret, would you have signed?
Probably, because I think about it a lot. Like, what would I have done if I wouldn't have? And I know I probably would have done it again. I just maybe would have protected myself a little bit better. But I know I would have hated staying in North Carolina and not ever been able to leave without debt.
So I guess another way to say that is, was it worth it? And it sounds like overall, you're saying, yeah, it was worth it overall.
I guess so. I just don't super regret it. But I wish there were other social programs that didn't involve shipping off like impoverished 18-year-olds to war zones. If there was any other way, I would have picked another way that would have better propelled me. But it was just too good of a like program package deal.
Yeah. This is kind of an oddball question, but do you consider yourself a patriot?
I mean, the definition of a patriot, just someone that loves this country.
I don't know. What does that word mean to you?
I love the American people, and I want, there to be power to the people. I just have a lot of grievances with the way we do things sometimes, like our government. But when I was a teenager, I didn't know what I know now. So I did think like, I'm joining the good guys. Here we go. I was very like straight and narrow thinking as a child. You learn like it's very nuanced and you have to swallow stuff and
In my perception from being outside of the military is that when you're commanded to do something, you don't have a lot of room to question it.
Mm-hmm.
Do you feel like that you were put in positions that were outside of what you would feel comfortable doing in your own morality?
Yeah, all the time. But I never did anything that was like extremely against my moral code. It was just more of having to tolerate things that are necessary for everyone to not die. And sometimes just things happen and they are the way that they are and you can't leave. And if you do nothing, it's, to the detriment of your team. So that's really the only kind of situations where I felt like I was doing things I didn't want.
So did you forge relationships in the military that persist today?
Yeah, I'm actually going to my friend's wedding in March in San Diego that I've known since like 2010, and she went on a deployment with me. Most of my friends are women that were from the military because, you bond a lot if you meet someone that's like your kind of person and then you both get thrown into like a pressure cooker. It's like a bonding for life kind of moment. Like I have friends that all have different like opinions and things. We're still all very like much of the opinion that we'd be there for each other to this day.
Right. So there's a searing that takes place when you're put in a place of danger together that's unique.
You truly see people for what they are. And, sometimes people are good and then you make friends.
Yeah. Okay. Has your service affected other relationships in your life in positive or negative ways?
Well, it's definitely affected my like social skills. I felt socially stunted when I got out of the military and tried to talk to normal people for a while. I just felt like a bear on my hind legs because I can't talk about work to anybody. Military dating life was kind of like not a thing unless you date someone that you work with. And then you work with them and you live with them and you work with them and you work with all their friends. So I just didn't do that. And so I have a hard time just sometimes connecting to people because I don't know what's normal and what is too intense, which my veteran friends, we all kind of sometimes seem to be on the same page.
Yeah, like the shit that we worry about in life as a civilian is like probably seems a little trivial.
Yeah, and we seem insane. Like to my sisters even, I seem like I'm insane because just like things I don't care about and things I'll say out loud. And I'm like, everybody's thinking it. Like, I know you're all thinking it. And then, like I'll just say it. A lot of my veteran friends are like that too. They'll just say what everyone is thinking no matter what. And everyone gets awkward. And I'm turning that down. But it's like I'm learning.
I don't necessarily see it as a bad thing.
I mean, it gets me in trouble sometimes because people don't want to hear it.
Right.
Yeah. Got to read the room.
Nearly a third of the military personnel, it's between a quarter and a third, are women now. Mm-hmm. But that's not always been the case.
No.
They were not allowed in the military until 1948 and then not in active combat until 2015. Mm-hmm. That's what
Yeah, I was in when they were like fighting for that, for women on the front lines. And it was, depending on, I guess, which kind of office or like unit you were at, it was a point of like contention for some people. Like the guys that have actually like seen combat were like, no, women's rights are going too far. They're saying because men instinctively run to protect a woman, and it would be a distraction. Like, it was a whole thing. We had to have lots of meetings and lots of discussions and lots of sensitivity trainings about it, and just saying, like, you cannot tell women that they can't go. It was a whole thing. Just like I was there when Don't Ask, Don't Tell got repealed too. It's like a whole thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Where do you fall on that? I mean, do you feel like it was a good move to put women in combat?
I don't think anybody should be in combat, to be honest. So, like, no. I just think they should just ban everyone. But that's not practical. So, like, nobody likes that when I say that. I'm just like, no. Why do you want to go on? No. Like, I don't want to go on the front lines. For what? For who? Like, no, thank you. If I knew 100%, like, I'm going to, like, save some, like, babies in a basket with newborn puppies underneath it, maybe. But, like, we don't know what we're getting sent for anymore. It's like, I wouldn't do it. But men too. Just, like, forbid men from being on the front lines as well. Like, let's just forbid them all.
I mean, you throw me in the front lines there, I guarantee you I'm not going to do any better.
Yeah, like, I don't think human beings should go. But that's, the bad answer, I suppose.
No, that's not in my world.
Like, I never once in my life wanted to fight to go beyond the front lines. I just thought, I can do this. And it was there in the job. I wasn't on, like, front lines, just, boots on ground kind of deal.
Yeah.
I didn't ever have to, like, go and, like, actually see terrorists, like, come running at you with, like, a knife or anything. Goodness. But I was their tech support. And I'd be, like, hiding a few corners away.
Right.
With my radio. Yeah. Wow. Like, are we good? We got to run. Do we have to run yet? But yeah.
Has the military adapted its environment to fit women, or do you feel like you were just still kind of shoved into an environment designed for men?
Oh, when I first joined in 2010 was when I was done with training and got to my actual real first duty station. And it was 100% men, only men. I got made fun of. I got called names. I was 19. And I remember, like, a bunch of the guys that were all older in their 20s or older in their 30s about to retire. And they would tell me every day, like, women, why are you here? Women shouldn't be here. And we'd be, like, on a deployment, and I'd be, like, fixing, like, gear and, like, working, and they wouldn't know how to do it. They'd be surrounding me as I was, like, doing our work, telling me jokes about, why does a woman need to wear white so she can match her kitchen appliances where she needs to stay? Ha, 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 like women in the kitchen. That was a huge, even if you do all of our work, you're just going to be a joke. And then I noticed towards the end, especially when I was a civilian working for DOD, the newer kids coming in, like the dudes, they were more progressive.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that actually made me happy. Like, they were, like, not making rape jokes and not making, like, women stupid, women don't know machine, women can't computer. Like, they're not like that. They're like, are you smart enough to do it? Great. I don't have to do the work. You can be part of it. Like, come on, go. They just don't. A lot of them didn't think about it. I haven't worked for, like, an agency since 2019. So I hope to think that it's, like, going and staying in that direction.
From your lips to God's ears. So we maybe have a generational
shift.
A generational shift where, that's what, frankly, dying is good for.
Yeah. Yeah.
Human mortality, we fight against it, but sometimes ideas and things just need to die off.
Mm-hmm.
So hopefully this next generation will make it an environment that both men and women can be comfortable in. Did you feel safe?
Sometimes. There are a lot of really creepy men in the military. A lot. They're not capable of viewing a woman in the workplace as equal to them and there to have a job. They think, oh, a woman is here for me and my entertainment. Even in a war zone, there's some men who think the woman is there for their entertainment. So I have to deal with a lot of that. And I didn't like that. But the reason I stayed so long, I did have a few good, like, commanders and, like, buddies that were solid, like my friends now, that, like, I realized, like, oh, they'll kill someone for me. Not, like, not war zone. They'll, like, beat up a creepy guy for me. Yeah. And so, I feels like depends on the day, depends on who am I working with and who's around.
You definitely experienced some creeps in the military, but you also had some people that were watching your back.
Yeah. It's like the worst of the creeps balances out because you have some of, like, the toughest people that'll, like, stick up for you.
In this binary culture in which we live, some people are uncomfortable with the women wearing a soldier's uniform. Those same people might be uncomfortable with me wearing a skirt. But I sometimes do wear a skirt. So women have had to fight to be in these roles in history, and you talked about that. So you were in service before women were actually able to be in combat. I mean, I know you're a civilian now, you're out of the DoD, but do you still feel that fight?
Not to be too woke, but I genuinely feel like anything that is run by men, if the men have been at the top and they've been at power, it's always going to be them versus anything different. So it's always been like women having to fight to wear their hair naturally, women having to fight to like have their baby and have a couple months off without getting sent right back to deploy because they need to heal, women being allowed to have to heal, like women being allowed to talk without men all lining up to see who's going to date her next. Like, it's always going to be a fight, but I hope that as older people die, there's more people of color and like other people infiltrating and moving up. I just hope maybe as time goes on, it just becomes more of them, because that's the only way I could see it ending, is just the people that are calling some shots need to go.
Obviously, this is a podcast, and so there's no visual here, but you're a woman of color. So how did you feel that your race affected or played into your opportunities, or how you were viewed?
Well, it took a couple of months. Everyone assumed because I was a teenager and I was a girl. I don't know how much race went into it. There are racists, but everyone just assumed I would be sleeping with everyone. And then when I didn't, everyone assumed I was gay. So then I had the gay women. There's gay women in the military probably since the beginning of women in the military. Gay women in the military are super chill. So I just had to be like, no, not that either. And they were like, okay. But like the men were really nice to me, really pressured me, offer to help me with everything around work. When I don't sleep with them, start being, rude and unhelpful. And then being like, you know what women are supposed to, well, women need to do this and that and that. Like, there's a lot of that. But then, actually, towards the end, and then on my other jobs, you just have to be better at the guys than they are at their job.
Yeah, that's pretty much kind of
the saving
how it
grace.
goes.
Yeah.
Both in terms
Become
of
their boss.
both in terms of people of color and women have to work and be better and smarter.
It's not that hard though. Yeah. All I had to do was read tech manuals, because they wouldn't. This isn't a man problem around the world, because I know men, they're educated men, but a lot of the men I worked with, they just innately thought they had some kind of divine higher intelligence than women. They just thought innately, oh, you don't know anything. And I'd be reading the books and being like, this is all wrong. And then I started being able to practically, effectively prove I'm better than you. And if you piss me off one more time, I'm going to stop working. And that was 2 years in, when I finally, I'd done a couple deployments. I had read every manual I could get my hands on. I'd taken outside classes in civilian world, tech classes. And then that was just my way of dealing with that, which was, rather effective, because you can't argue with physical results.
Right. Wow. So you also mentioned, I kind of want to just touch on the LGBTQ angle, because you said don't ask, don't tell was, okay. So can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah. There's been gay people in the military probably since the beginning of the military, men and women. And I always thought, what a stupid rule, because even before it was repealed, they were openly gay and no one cares. That's one thing. The military is progressive. No one cares if you're gay or not. We are very supportive. There was lesbians in my birthing areas, and nobody cares. Everyone was respectful. Then we found, one of my friends, he was trying to be in the Navy, and they found out he is gay somehow, and he got a letter saying he's disqualified for service. And that is just, I can't fathom that. I don't get it, because the openly gay people I know that were in the service were some of the smartest, hands down, very smart, very hardworking, which probably, because if they weren't, they'd get hated on for being different. I don't know. But they repealed that in 2011. And just with the women's thing didn't go over nearly as well as the don't ask, don't tell. But we all had to sit in a room together, and a sensitivity trainer flew out and was like, well, how does everyone feel? Are you all going to be okay? And we were all just yeah. is pretty much abolished here in practice. Like, we don't care. Nobody cares. Please, just do it.
Well, that's encouraging. I mean,
Yeah.
And I just got to back up. So your friend got a letter.
He got a letter
actually
saying,
in
"We know you're
writing.
gay." Yeah. He
And
sent me.
did it say that?
Yeah,
I mean,
it was like, "We know you're in." Well, no, it wasn't like you're gay, boy, but it was like you were in like disaccordance with regulation, yada yada. You're violating the UCMJ, blah blah blah, which was no sodomy.
oh, I see.
Yeah, that was a thing they taught us in boot camp when you have to go to a weekly class where you learn the UCMJ and no sodomy. I have no idea if that's still a rule, but I just remember being like, what kind of government overreach for women and men? They're just like, there's a rule in there that was just basically like, is this too raunchy?
No, this is great. This
It
is
was
great.
like basically like only missionary. And I remember reading that and just being like, what the heck? They cannot. How are they going to know? But then
Wow.
yeah, like how are they going to know if you do that? But I guess I don't know. Yeah, it's like, what?
They only allow you to observe certain pages of the Kama Sutra. Other pages are completely off limits.
It's illegal.
Oh my God. Wow.
Yeah, that's
only
a crazy
missionary.
one. Yeah. I don't know, but I hope that's gone. But that's what his letter said. It was like, you're in violation of the no sodomy article. And we were like, damn, because he was smart. He was graduated from college and wanted to enlist still to pay off his loans, but he would have been a great addition. And that's a stupid rule that has stupid results. So I'm glad it's gone.
Right. Yeah. Well, me too. So excellent. Well, I feel like we've covered a lot of ground. I really have enjoyed this conversation. I appreciate you being here on the Snowflake podcast. Sylvia, thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me. My first podcast.
Welcome back to Snowflake. Sylvia said her expectations for the military were shattered and reformed multiple times over. I thought that was a powerful image. She also wished there were other social programs that didn't involve shipping off impoverished 18-year-olds to war zones, as she put it, if there was any other way. And I was really struck with how she talked about men. Some of them thinking that women are just there for their entertainment. She even chose to wear clothes, drab and baggy, that made her the most invisible. The sexism that still existed during her service was palpable to me. But on the other hand, it sounded like the next generation of men coming up didn't come with that same baggage, and that was encouraging. I got the felt sense that gender was even more of an issue for her than race. She had to work harder, do better, study more diligently, and constantly strategize to protect herself from misogyny and harassment. But one of the clearest things I got from both interviews was that enlisting in the military indeed is a path most traveled by those lacking opportunity. For better or for worse, the military puts careers and higher education in reach for people on the fringes. In these polarized political times, it can be touchy to talk about anything, the military notwithstanding. And I could express a variety of opinions about budgets or the military-industrial complex or the incestuous relationship between that and politicians, etc. We could talk about patriotism more broadly or what it means to quote-unquote support the troops. And maybe that's another show. But I chose to have a boots-on-the-ground conversation with two people that are part of this organization that is both a budgetary behemoth with checkered past and also, in many ways, a jewel in the crown of our government institutions. I'm not trying to convince you of anything, but rather just shine the light on the perspectives of two people with real-world experience. Thank you for listening to the Snowflake podcast. Until next time, be good to yourself and be good to others. Bye for now. We are always delighted to receive feedback from listeners. Email knowingpodcast@gmail.com. Also visit me at robstroup.com, or to stay informed on new music or writing releases, visit robstroup.substack.com. Snowflake is written and produced by me here at Taproot Studios, Truth or Consequences, New Mexico. A special thanks to Wendy Tremaine and Pete Droge for editing consultation. Snowflake is a production of Chapter 24 Media. Thanks for listening.